Yeah, we were having a slight technical difficulties here, so we're just getting ready to go here in the next minute.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Brain.
Okay, we are good on YouTube, so we can start.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Southeast Education Cooperative. Our first order of business is to approve the consent agenda, which had our main minutes on it. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at them? If so, I'd entertain a motion.
It's Chris. I'll make a motion.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
This is Corey. I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approval of the minutes as provided, signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, signify by saying no. Motion carries. Going on to our old business, first item is our self-evaluation of the board itself. I want to thank everybody for getting them to me, and I apologize for those of you that had to send up multiple times. I have moved offices over the last month, and because of that, was without technology on and off for about a 2-week time period. So, but I did get everybody's finally, and I appreciate that greatly. There were two things that kind of came through on a couple of the self-evaluations that we did that are areas that certainly I think going forward, we need to be focused in on and make sure we're addressing this from a governance perspective and keeping the board informed where they feel they need to be. One was being able to better communicate our legislative positions of the NDSEEC. And that came from 2 different board members. So again, I think we've done a pretty good job of at least keeping everybody up to speed. And obviously with Kyle serving in the Senate, we kind of get a firsthand look oftentimes of the process of sausage making going on in Bismarck. But I'll keep that front and center, and I'm sure the new executive team will as well as we get into the next legislative session to really make sure maybe we have a 1-page bullet point that we can send out to all of our member schools with, here are the specific things that the NDSEEC is going to be advocating for going forward. Any thoughts you have on that, Kyle?
I think I think that's a good idea. I probably would collectively like, to make sure that all 7 of the REAs are, have similar kind of goals, or that we've vetted some of those concepts ahead of time, obviously with the NDREA, and they've had a chance to vet those with their boards out in their regions. But I think that's a good idea.
Super. The only other section that popped up, and it actually came up on 4 different reviews, was the question, am I aware of the contributions and concerns of the NDSEEC staff? Now, as I read that question and thought about it, especially in light of our new governance model, we probably want to modify this question a little bit, because quite frankly, the concerns of the staff really are supposedly supposed to go through the leadership that's in the room right there that I'm looking at, Kyle and his team. We as the board, from a governance perspective, certainly need to become aware of what the different folks in our organization are bringing to the table. So again, I think it's something we can think about going forward, but I think under our new governance model, we really have to keep ourselves focused in on that there's only one employee of the SEC that the board is responsible for. and that's the executive director. But knowing what all departments, and I don't even know if that's the right word, but what all of the great staff are involved with is certainly, I think, of value. And I suspect the newer people on the board may have less awareness of that than some of us that have been around longer. From those board members that are online right now, were there any other areas of the self-evaluation that you wanted to highlight or bring up? Because this is really an opportunity for us to introspectively think about how we're operating as a board internally and what we need to do to professionally develop to become better board members as well. Hearing nothing else, I'll move us on to our second item, which is our executive director evaluation. I want to thank again all the board members for responding, and I want to thank Kyle for his service the past year. I believe everybody got a copy of the summary report that I put together, and I see they put it up on the screen for us. I just want to highlight a few things that mathematically is how I kind of digest this and try to figure out what is our collective score for Kyle. So there were actually 28 different grade points that were involved, mostly because I had 7 different evaluations evaluating 4 different items: personal leadership, thought leadership, people leadership, and results leadership. So for each of those, there were 7 scores that were attributed from the individual board members. And obviously, Kyle ranked himself as well. I've included in the summary report how Kyle ranked himself and the comments that he had put forward, so the rest of the board could see your thoughts on your performance, Kyle, which I think was spot on. But I want to numerically share how we collectively come to the ranking that I gave at the end. Of the 28 possible areas that were being measured, 4 of them came back rated at level, what I call level 3, which was consistently meets the expectations. So I would almost, if you put this on the old grading scale I went to school with, we had 5 different levels of opportunity here that we could grade you on, and one would be considered an A, B, C, D, and a failure altogether. So a C grade would be about a 3, and you had 4 out of 28 came in as a C grade on your report card. You had 14 often exceeds expectations. So that would be a B. You had 14 of those on your report card, and you had 10 consistently exceeds, which would be an A. So you ended up with 10 A's, 14 B's, and 4 C's, which I would place that in the high B+ category, at slightly above a 4.4 on the 1 or 0 to 5 scale. So if we look at that from these particular measurements, you truly are coming in at consistently meets and often exceeds expectations, really in all 4 areas. So hats off to you, Kyle. I think from the perspective of all of us board members, your leadership is certainly appreciated. I tried to include a couple of anecdotal things that people noted in the summary report as well. And again, I'm going to put together all of the individual ones, Kyle, and when you and I sit down for coffee or whatever, I'll give you a copy of the individual ones as well. But overall, obviously, we were extremely pleased with the operation last year. Obviously, it was a huge lift in getting a new strategic plan in place and really adopting a new governance model, both of which it had your fingerprints and guidance all over it. So thank you for that as well. Any comments from any of the other board members regarding Kyle's evaluation?
I just think it's going to give or just take a little time to get used to the new tool, which I think is better than the previous tool because I did not like the previous one. But so thanks for everyone's work on getting this put together.
I know there were a
Yeah,
few.
so I think we'll get much better with this tool going forward. And some of you were not on when I mentioned Kyle. One of the components in this tool, which we didn't use this last year because we adopted it so late in the year, is Kyle is now going to work on putting together his personal and professional goals for the coming year. And he'll be getting those back to myself or whoever would be the next chair. So we have that going forward as we begin the review process for the coming year. Do we need to formally take action on this and approve your evaluation? I believe we do. So I would entertain a motion to accept the summary report.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of approval of the summary report of Kyle's evaluation for the previous school year, please indicate by saying yes.
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 Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. Kyle, anything you would like to add?
No, I really appreciate the support of the board, but again, a lot of the credit for the results goes to the work of the staff. And so I'm very grateful and appreciative for their hard work and their ability to be flexible and especially on years like this. This is the 5th time I've been gone from in regards to the legislative session, and we continue to get better at it. But again, it's everybody else has to put a little bit more work in when I'm gone. So again, very appreciative. I do agree that I think this is an important part of the evaluation piece, and we need to continue to improve it. Again, as I've commented before, I'm closer to the end than the beginning. And so, at some point, as you transition to a new executive director, we not only over the next year here want to firm up the process of the new governance model, the strategic plan, but this full evaluation piece is an important piece to continue to build on too, so that there's some alignment.
Absolutely. Well, I think they have put up your contract on the screen, and this would be for the coming year, which we're about to embark upon. And for those that are new to the board, technically speaking, Kyle is leased to us, is how I would describe it, by the North Dakota State College of Science, who technically is his employer, but he has been on long-term lease to us for quite a few years. So his employment contract is technically through the university, and obviously we, at the end of the day, pay the result of that contract. Any questions regarding the contract for the coming year?
So Jim, I'd just like to make one comment on it. So for the past 18 years, the college has always paid a portion of my salary. When Dr. Richmond left in 2021, it was decided, because of the amount of work, which isn't a lot for the college anymore, it was early on, it was decided that we would stagger down, we would it down to 0. So this will be the first year where the college is not paying any dollars towards my contract. There was some consideration of me becoming an SEC employee, but there was a little bit of complication between the retirement systems and how that's changing with the state and some things. And so Dr. Flanagan, the current president of NDSEEC, agreed, you know, to continue to carry this for one more year. With SEC paying 100%, and it actually came in a little under budget. We had budgeted with $150,000, but this includes all the benefits and everything too. So it came in a little bit under contract. But then going forward, though, I think that's an appropriate amount that will need to be budgeted as at some point you transition to a new executive director. And so just like we built a new office space into our budget, now we'll build the proper amount of dollars for an executive director into our budget too.
Any questions regarding Kyle's contract for the coming year? Again, I believe we need to take action to approve this, so I would entertain a motion to approve the professional service contract for Kyle for the coming school year.
This is Patty. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Patty. Is there a second?
This is Corey. I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. We will execute the contract and either get it to me electronically and I'll sign it, or if need be, I can run out there, Kyle, and do it too at the office, whichever is going to work best.
Brenda will send it
That
to you
bring-
and you can DocuSign it.
Okay, perfect. Next up on our agenda is a list of our meeting dates. And you'll see our next official meeting is set up for August 9th, and that will be at the offices in Fargo. And that's a little longer meeting. We tend to have kind of a summer retreat meeting. That'll go from 10 to 2. And then you see the dates for September, November, February, April, and June. Every other one being virtual versus in person in the office in Fargo. There's another column that is not filled in with dates yet, but will have to be as we start to put together the new operating governance model. We are going to obviously be having a planning committee going forward that will ultimately be figuring out their meeting dates. And obviously we'll have the executive committee as well going forward. So both of those will be dates that will be determined once the membership of those groups are put together. Any questions on the meeting dates? Do we need to take action on these? I don't think so, but
No, just wanting to make sure there weren't too many conflicts. I know we were working around some other standing meetings. If these are good, we will get calendar invites for them.
And again,
well,
really,
they're good. Yep, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, really hoping we can get as close to 100% attendance at the August 9th meeting. You know, as we roll out the new strategic plan and stuff, and you know, so.
Absolutely. Hopefully that'll work on everybody's calendar. Next item on our agenda is our 2023-24 budget considerations.
So I'm gonna let Brenna talk a little bit about those.
Okay. Yeah, this was just kind of a placeholder. We don't have a budget finalized for you to see yet. We usually do that in August, it turns out to be. We're just waiting, mainly because we're waiting our two largest revenue streams still. The 21st Century after school program grant, we don't have a number for. We're in a 3-year grant cycle, but they can still change the dollar amount on us every year. So last year that was about $850,000 in revenue, and we're hoping it's around that. Again, but we haven't heard. The other large grant is the CCA grant, which we just finished our first 2-year cycle of that. And so the renewal process has been a learning experience. That was $2 million for those 2 years. It seems as it's going to be between 2.4 and 2.7 in the next cycle, with maybe another $1.5 million. Keely would know more, but none of that is really in writing anywhere yet, so that is a significant variance to our budget, so we're waiting.
They are working through the funding that was allocated during the session to within the contract holders, in addition to the federal CCDF funding, which the existing contract is largely based on.
And just so everybody, just a reminder, CCA is child care aware, and so was part of that 66.5 million that was allocated for child care. And then some increases and some federal grants that the early childhood division that manages those grants receive from the federal government. The transition, whether they had to go out for an RFP or they could reissue an ongoing contract with a little different scope of work. That will be finalized by our August meeting, and we'll be able to better solidify what our budget is, but it appears like we'll have a significant increase in some dollars there.
Any questions on the budget? Well, hearing none and seeing no hands go up, we'll move over to the new business section. And the first order of business is the review of our agency bylaws.
I will bring those up. This is on the, I guess, part of that annual work calendar that we will review the bylaws annually.
Jolene, there hasn't been any changes since we did this in the spring, right? Okay.
Correct.
So when I reviewed them, and again, it's for your review, but when I reviewed them, I didn't see anything that from the last time we updated them. Oh, apparently I didn't do as good a job reviewing them as Jolene did, so maybe there are a couple of things.
A couple of things. One would be, as we went through this governance process, we did realize that the terms of the officers weren't things that we were necessarily following. It does say that an officer can serve no more than 2 consecutive terms. So I think that's something that we're beginning to follow, but just wanted to mention that in case there was interest in adjusting that at all. And then the other piece was that in terms of the governing board members, we don't have anything written in, and perhaps do not need to, in terms of how those what that appointment process looks like, in terms of if that's a vote of the governing board. It's just a little ambiguous in terms of how those members are elected versus appointed.
Any thoughts anybody has on that?
We should have a process outlined, but I think currently there's usually hasn't been more than one person that was interested. So I guess if there were 2 people interested, there should probably be a process outlined. What do other REAs do for this?
A lot of our REAs have their superintendents make up their board. So like the NDSEEC out of Devil's Lake has 22 superintendents that are their board. I think that's common in several of our REAs, but the CREA has a different governance structure out there because of their size. But I would say there's at least three or four that have all of their superintendents as their board members.
The one out of Bismarck and Minot, the Central Regional Education Association, CREA, they have a similar model to what we have, where they have regions set up. I'm not familiar with their process in voting. I could follow up on that. Again, yeah, I just don't know, Heidi. So,
We could follow up and bring that to
yeah.
The retreat.
Any other questions or thoughts regarding the bylaws? Well, I do not believe any action is required here, and we'll hopefully hear a little bit more what other REAs are doing in the state when we get together in August. And we can always readdress this if we want to at a later date as well. Governing board member term renewal. I believe Region 4 and Region 3 are both up, according to what I'm seeing on our agenda. So Brittany, that would be you in Region 3. Are you willing to serve for another term?
Yes.
Perfect. That makes that job a lot easier. And I do not believe Mitch is with us.
I did have a
This afternoon.
conversation, Jim, I did have a conversation, and Mitch visited with his other superintendents, and they encouraged him to continue to serve, so he's willing to continue to serve.
Super. So at this point in time, we don't have any issues there we have to worry about that, correct?
Correct.
Brings us to election of officers as per our GP 3.1. And this would be a 2-year term for the chair, the vice chair. And I actually don't think we have to elect the immediate past chair. I have a feeling I get that by default, but if somebody wants to challenge me on it, I'm happy to, step aside and have somebody else fill that role. But at this point in time, I would say it's open for nominations as to who would like to be chair for the next 2 years of the board. Well, Patty, you're the vice chair currently. Are you willing to step up to the chair position for the next 2 years?
Yes, I could do that. If somebody else would like to do it, I'm certainly fine with that too.
Well, I'm not seeing anybody else jumping to have the opportunity. I don't think you people understand how much I get paid for doing this, or you probably all want the job. But seeing nobody else is interested and Patty is willing to, I'd entertain a motion that we unanimously elect Patty Stedman to be our chair for the coming 2 years.
This is Corey. I will make that motion.
Second,
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of Patty being the chair for the next 2 years, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, signify by saying no, and recognize that you will then have to serve yourself. Seeing none, congratulations, Patty.
Thank you.
I will just finish this out if it's okay before I turn it over to you. I personally think, as we think about the vice chair position, that one of the things that I think is important that we always make sure we get all the different size schools represented at the board and at the leadership level. And obviously Patty and I represent the 2 largest districts in the SEEC. So I'm hoping perhaps one of the current board members that is from a smaller school system might be willing to serve as VP for the next 2 years. And I don't see if he's still online, but I'm going to actually nominate Corey, unless he absolutely refuses to be the vice chair of the SEEC for the next 2 years.
I'd do that, Jim.
Thank you, Corey.
I'll second the motion.
Then moved and seconded for Corey to be the vice chair for the next 2 years. Is there anybody else interested? Do we have to have a runoff election, or can we unanimously cast a ballot for Corey? Well, seeing nobody else jumping to raise their hand, all those in favor of Corey being our vice chair for the coming 2 years signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. On behalf of the current board, I want to personally thank you, Patty, and personally thank you, Corey, for your past service and for being willing to be our leadership team for the next 2 years. And from my chair, it looks like I have completed our agenda, but I do want to point out that we do need to have 2 people appointed to the planning committee. So I would suggest that at some point in time, Patty, you and Corey and Kyle connect the dots on that and figure out who you'd like to have, because this will be the very first planning committee for the SEEC as we embark upon our new governance structure.
Thank you, Jim.
Anything else for the good of the order this afternoon?
Jim, I think it's important to thank you for all your work as chair. Not only for myself, but I know my staff has greatly appreciated your work and your preparation for the meetings and your understanding of what we do. So we just collectively want to say thank you for your work.
And your efficiency. Can we say his efficiency?
Well, thank you for that. And rest assured, I'm not going anywhere. I just now get to be this immediate pass thing, which kind of sounds old to me, which kind of I am. So what the heck. Well, I hope to see everybody at our August meeting. And at that meeting, you'll be taking the helm, Patty, which I know will be just fine. Everybody have a great summer, and we'll see you in August.
Thank you.
Thank you.